everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Cynthia, and this video is going to be the last one about the creation of the Lady in Blue journal. We are going to be assembling some signatures today. It is going to be a chatty video, a little bit of a long one, but I wanted to make sure that I took the time to really explain a little bit more about my process and how I select the papers that I put into my journals. So my first step here is to put to the side all the ephemera that we've created so far. I want to make sure that the pages that I'm going to be selecting for this journal are going to be really kind of in vibe or synced in the same creative flow as all the ephemera we've already created. And you can see here, this is the cover of the journal. I'm finally happy with it and done with it. And there's still some work to be done on the inside, but right now I'm gonna be just focusing on creating some signatures. So I've already pre-selected some papers that I thought could go well. Of course, I selected just a variety of papers. I have some digital prints from the kit that we've been using, and then just a bunch of other ones. Here I'm showing you the width of the spine, and the journal I'm currently working in is actually a similar width. And in that journal I put 5 signatures, and although it's not full, I mean, it's gotten really full. And although that's fine for a journal that I'm working in, knowing that I'm going to be selling this journal, I want to make sure that the person who receives it does have the room to grow within the journal, beyond the ephemera that we've created. So I'm going to keep that in mind. I'm going to insert 3 signatures rather than 5. I might have a couple extra pages for each signature, but at least this way I know that there will be a little bit of extra room to create some bulkiness into the journal. So my first step here is to select papers that have the right colors within the digitals. So for example, that one I really liked. I'm going to speed through some of this process because I mean, my video was, this took me like 2 hours, so I don't want to keep you waiting here for 2 hours. But here I'm just going through those digitals from the Ruby and Pearl XO digital kit that we've been using, and just selecting the papers that I do want to use as full pages in the journal. I'm really going with the tones of blue and just selecting the ones that I really want to include. This one here is actually from Johanna Clark, and then I have a few from Digital Curio, as well as of course Dust to Roses. For the ledgers, I just she makes the best ones. So here I've cabbage dyed some digital prints, so I'm trying to see if there's a couple that I would like to include as well. And then next type of papers that I want to include are going to be more of a blank canvas within the journal, so I'm including some coffee stained papers as well as some cabbage dyed paper. And I'm going to be putting 1 sheet of each within each of the signature. So here you can see, now I'm like, okay, well, let's just start making those 3 signatures so that it makes a little bit more sense. So I've divided, I've selected 3 first digitals that I know I want to use, and then I'm just trying to combine them with other prints that I think go well with them. And things are going to be moving around a lot at this stage. I'm really not set in stone, but I'm just trying to keep the same amount of pages within each signature within, of course, like the total number, but also, okay, there's this many digital prints, this many dyed paper, and there's also going to be original ephemera, vintage ephemera, that I'm going to be sticking to the same amounts for each of the signature. For that signature to the right, I had selected this printable, and I'm gonna be changing my mind a bunch of time. I couldn't figure out, but it just didn't seem to fit right, and finally I made up my mind, and it's gonna be something different than this. But here I'm just counting the pages, seeing how many am I at, and because right now I'm only at digital prints, and I'm just referring back to the journal I'm currently using and seeing how many pages I had in this journal. Because again, I want to make sure that I'm just not creating too much bulk, because I want whoever gets this journal to be able to really, have a bit of a wide range of opportunities on how they can create inside the journal. I've also added, I have like cutout paper bags that I really like to include in my journals that I really personally enjoy creating on. So those relatively take no room. And then I have some dictionary pages and some other like bits and pieces of like ephemera, vintage ephemera. This is the printable that I'm going to end up swapping out that other printable with. I love the telegram printables of Dust to Roses, and this one had all those blues within it, so it just seemed to work perfectly for this project. So I have a couple sheets of music here, and I also have a few pieces of, one is vellum, and then the two other ones are tracing papers, so I want to include those. And I have a vintage ledger as well that I'm going to cut in two and insert that in two of the signatures. Now I'm ready to start really focusing on how each of the signatures is going to come together. That process for me is the most challenging one. Whenever I create a journal, whether it's for myself or for someone else, my most important, I guess, like key element for me is for the journal to feel special in your hands. There's something to be said about when you hold something in your hands, or even when you wear something, a piece of clothing. I know I felt this way about finding my wedding dress. It's about the feeling. It's about how the weight of the journal is in your hands. It's about the texture that you experience as you're flipping through the pages, what your eyes see, the different colors and patterns, how they interact with each other. And so here I'm just trimming a little excess of on the digital prints, but the moment that I start assembling and folding my pages, that's really what my focus is. How am I going to experience this when I use this journal, or when someone else uses this journal? What is going to spark joy within them truly? I know it can sound in a way almost like silly. It's a little bit like that Marie Kondo, if it doesn't spark you joy, don't keep it. And I strongly believe in that. Like, I mean, I I am by no means a minimalist. I do have a lot of things, But I do believe that if something doesn't bring you joy, then there is no, unless it's obviously very useful, such as like a spoon. Although my cutlery is something I really enjoy. We picked out my cutlery because I liked what it looked like. But just overall, I want things to spark joy. I want things to look beautiful, to feel pretty, and to just bring happiness to whoever is going to be using it, whether that's me or someone else. So, keeping that in mind, I do want to try my best to alternate between vintage ephemera, dyed papers, as well as the printables. Another thing that I always keep in mind is which way the patterns are facing. I try and fold my printables within each of the signature alternately, so that, for example, this printable is folded that the pattern is facing out, and then perhaps the next one, the pattern will be facing inwards. I hope that makes sense. And you're just gonna see me here really playing around a ton with each of the signature, trying to do that alternation between the types of paper that I'm using, the types of textures as well, because there's a big difference between, for example, this paper that I'm folding right now feels, it feels pretty old. It is really nice, like it's silk, almost like silky feeling, but the one against it is going to be perhaps a dyed paper that is going to be like crumply and have a completely different texture to it. I think that this is going to be my first signature of my journal as I'm creating this. So what I'm also keeping in mind is that what are you going to see when you open up the journal? That's such an important thing, because if it's somewhat boring, I guess it doesn't spark joy. So I'm trying to create that layered effect for my first signature, at least, so that when you open the journal for the first time, you get a peek at all the special things that are to come, all the little treasures that are within, and it gets you excited. It makes it appealing. It makes it so that you want to use your journal and you want to create within it. So here I'm just trimming some papers and making sure that everything is going to fit. I'm also going to refer back to the journal. I should have done that earlier in my process, but my journal is just a little bit smaller than what I'm used to creating in, so I had to trim the regular sized papers just a little bit so that none of them would be coming out. So I am going to be doing that pretty soon, and just adding some beautiful music sheets. I love adding music sheets within my journals. That's one of my favorite types of papers for sure. But as I'm creating this also, I think it's worth mentioning that so for me personally, the reason I choose the papers that I choose and the amounts of each is because I want a variety, but I also want my journal to feel inviting and to not take up too much room within my creative mind. So my journal is a canvas rather than like a started up work, I guess. And some of the pages are a starting point, absolutely. Sometimes you'll be inspired by some of the digital prints that you put in there or some of the pieces of ephemera that you've included. However, if I put too many prints, as well as I feel that way often with scrapbook papers, they are very busy and they're beautiful, don't get me wrong. I love the look of them, but in the past when I've tried to create with them, I just struggle too much to create. It almost puts a stop at my creative process, and it makes it difficult for me to pick a page I want to create on. I feel like I have to stick to that, to be true to that page almost in a certain way, and it really, because it alters my creative thought this much, I just prefer not including as much. I like to have a lot of blank spaces, although beautiful, and often with ruffles and other little bits and pieces added to the journal. They still feel very special, but they don't take up so much room creatively. I hope this makes sense to some of you. This is just my thought process for how I like to journal and how I also want to share my journaling experience with others. Because I have tried to use some of the journals that I've created in the past, and just through my experiences creating more journals for myself, this is what I found that works the best for me, that allows me to almost like be open creatively the most, and really encourages me more to create in my journal, to be excited to create in my journal, rather than to feel like, oh no, I don't know what page I'm going to be using. I don't know if I'm going to find a page I feel like using today. And that's just the worst space to be in when all you want to do is create. So here I've decided that I was going to be folding some of the papers a little bit more, as well as trimming others that are, of course, too long for the actual journal. And moving forward, I'm going to be keeping that in mind. And as I'm assembling the following signatures, I'll just have a better idea on how long each pieces of paper can actually be. So I've decided to rip some of the papers as well. Whenever giving the opportunity to rip or cut, I do prefer ripping. Of course, right now I'm like freely doing so, but if I know that I want the page to still be quite straight, I will use my ruler, but just generally I prefer using my ruler and just my fingers to rip everything, and it just makes it adds that texture, it adds a certain feel to the journal and makes it feel almost more approachable in some ways. Because for me, if something is too pretty, not that this isn't pretty, but if something is really perfect and pretty, I feel wrong changing anything about it, and it makes me feel like, oh no, I'm gonna ruin it. I don't know if I'm the only one who feels this way, but that's just how I view it. So I like to make things a little bit imperfect and live in that space of imperfection and be content with it. So here I'm just ripping a piece of vellum, which I really don't like ripping vellum. I never find that it rips nicely for some reason, but it worked out pretty good there. And I am gonna be inking up that edge so that it pops a little bit more against whatever piece of paper that it's gonna be laying against. I really hope that you're all doing really well and taking care of yourselves. You know, it's as the months continue, it does get harder. I think a lot of us are a little bit tired, and for those of us who haven't been able to really see family and see friends, it's been really challenging and quite lonely some. And yeah, I'm sorry if I'm not uploading as much as perhaps I wish, or I don't know if others also wish I was uploading more, but truly I'm just trying to take care of myself and make sure that I'm in the right space when I'm creating, and that I'm creating for the right reasons. Although that, of course, I love sharing what I create, and I get really excited to share with all of you, whether it is on YouTube or on Instagram. Whenever I'm not posting or not creating, it's not because I don't care. It's simply because my mind is not in the right space to do so, and I think that's okay, you know. I see so often people post like, oh, I'm so sorry that I've been a bit absent or whatever it is. And although in a way I appreciate it, at the same time, I wish we didn't have to say we're sorry for that, because, you know, create when you feel like it is right, and create for the right reasons, because most of us create for ourselves first, as it should be. I know for myself, I create for my mental health, and it helps me tremendously to feel better and to process my emotions and to just, you know, feel a bit more at peace. And how silly would it be to force myself to do something that is supposed to be therapeutic, but to force myself to do it for the wrong reasons? Like, it doesn't seem right to me. So all that to say, I'm sorry if I'm not as consistent as perhaps I should be, but I'm just trying to be kind to myself and to allow myself to kind of navigate these times. And we're not out of the woods, unfortunately, and I don't know how the situation is wherever you are, from where you're listening to this video, but I'm in Canada. And although my part of Canada is relatively doing better than some, I mean, it's not great. And my family is not where I live. So I'm in the western side of the country. And if you're not familiar with Canada, Canada's really big, like really big. And so, to give you an example, if I was to drive from where I live currently, and I said, oh, I'm gonna drive down to where my mom lives, it would be over, oh, I mean, if you want to take any breaks, it would probably take about 3 days, but it's about like a day and a half of constant driving. I think it's like something like 32 hours or something like that. So it's just, it's not a possibility for me to see my family, and it's just been challenging. So with all of that in mind, I'm just trying to do my best and create as much as I can, of course, for myself, but for you guys as well, and just trying to do so and in keeping a balance of allowing myself to grieve all the moments that are being missed at the moment. And hopefully we all come out of it just in a better place. But enough of that. I hope I'm not bumming you guys out. So here I am still going through trying to figure out how to assemble these pages. Like I said, I spend so much time just flipping through each one of the page, trying to make sure that I like how it feels. I was really trying not to have a printable in the middle of this signature, but it didn't work out that way, so I ended up having a printable, and that's okay. You know, sometimes you have an idea in mind and it's just not working, and it's okay to say, all right, we'll just run with it. And I really wanted to try something new with this printable here of the telegram. What I'm about to do is, if you want to try it, is gonna feel pretty counterintuitive, I guess. First, I'm just trying to see if I want it inside of the signature, but ultimately I want it as the outer paper of the signature, and I want to give it a little bit of extra oomph. And to do so, we're going to do something a little bit fun, something a little bit different. I mean, I've seen other people do this. I'm not inventing this whatsoever. Just recently, Kylie from Paper Daisy Journals, she posted on how to make tea stained paper without actually tea staining any papers, and that was part of the process as well. And so, you know, like, I'm not inventing this. But I'm gonna grab this printable, and first thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to rip all the edges, because I simply don't want every edge to be perfectly straight. And so this is a little bit tedious, you know, because I'm trying to keep that brown line on the outline of the telegram. So I'm just going at it really slowly. I've sped up the video because it took so long. And then when you open it, the top and the bottom don't have the same amount of extra after that brown line, so I couldn't do them at the same time. So it took a while, but ultimately it worked out and it did what I wanted it to do. But once I'll be done someday, after many moments of ripping this paper, the next step is what's gonna feel the most strange, I guess. And you know, you could definitely simply rip the edges and skip that part, but I just wanted to try something new, was hoping that it would work out, and I really liked the way that it turned. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm teasing, just kind of saying what it is, not really saying what it is. I'm sure many of you can guess what it is at this point. But what we are gonna do, now that I'm done ripping all the edges around the telegram, is I'm gonna crumple it. So I'm gonna grab this paper and crumple it, just put it in a ball. You can do that like more or less depending on how crinkly you want your paper to be. You could also iron your paper afterwards if you just want the look of those lines created, but not the crinkled effect. So I've just grabbed my distressing ink and I'm just brushing through over the bigger cracks that are sticking out, and this is allowing me to create this. And I'm just really aging this this digital print so that it looks a little bit more vintage and it adds a little bit more interest to the otherwise blank space on the other side of it. I'm not really going to be inking much of the actual digital print. I will ink, of course, all the edges, but I'll leave the picture alone. So here you have the final result of that. As it will be laying in the journal, it will like get flattened out a little bit, so that's really good because it's still a little bit crumbly right now, crumply. But I just really like that it adds a little bit more texture and just something different to it, and I love the way that it looks against the other signature. So that's always something I keep in mind. From one signature to the other, I want things to flow and things to look pretty. So I make sure that the papers on the outside of it will look nice one beside each other. And then I'm just doing my final signature and just trying to assemble it a little bit more quick. I mean, it's never quick. I was working with the other journals that I'm creating, and this was the first time that I had created the pages to go inside a journal before creating the actual cover of a journal. And I thought this was so interesting because I recently watched a video by Creating with Jovi, and she mentioned how she cannot create the book cover before her pages are all done, and I feel the absolute opposite way. So that is so interesting to me, just how different all of our minds work and our creative process. So anyway, I had created these pages, and when I came to finally creating the books and putting the pages within them, I hated it. So I had to move all the pages and redo all my signatures. I kept the same pages, but I had to move things around within each one of the signature. It took me so long, but I think I finally got it to a point that I really like. And I'm quite anxious to share the journals that I'll be putting up for sale, but I'm really looking forward to it. And I really hope that some of you will like what I've created. I'll do a whole video kind of showing you each one of the journals and a little bit of my thought behind how I'm selling them and all of that. So stay tuned for that. That is going to be coming pretty soon. And yeah, I'm just assembling all these pages, trying my best to alternate, trying to figure out how everything is gonna look together. After creating my signatures, once I'm happy with how they look, that's when I add ruffles and tabs, anything like that. And I will also be adding a pocket to the book cover before I sew in my signatures. Another thing that I keep in mind when creating my signatures is, so you see here, I decided not to leave that that paper bag paper on the outside of the signature. And the reason that I've done that is because I keep in mind how brittle each paper is, and the paper that is on the outside of your signature should not be a brittle paper unless you plan on reinforcing it where you are going to be puncturing it. Otherwise, I mean, you're just more prone to tears. I'm not saying you can't do it. It's just you have to keep in mind that this paper is going to be under more pressure than other papers, and therefore it might rip. So if it is a brittle paper, you may want to consider adding either some masking tape or other type of tape to kind of reinforce it right at the fold. And here I'm just seeing how it all looks inside of the journal, if I like it, how much room it's gonna be giving me. And that's about it for this video. I'm so excited to share with you the final product. The journal is now finished, so I'll be filming that video pretty soon. And if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up or leave a comment down below. If you haven't subscribed, please do. I would love for you to. And thank you all so much who have recently subscribed to my channel. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. So I hope that you're all doing really well, and I will talk to you in my next video. Take care.